This is coffee number 5. I'm your host, Lara Schmoisman. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to coffee number 5. Are you ready for this? Remember this year when the year started, and I know we're almost at the end of the year, that I told you what was my keyword for the year? My keyword was community. And because I was inspired by new communities that I joined. I was inspired by what I was seeing out there in social media. And I was inspired by my team. And if we wouldn't be a community and working together, it wouldn't happen. The magic wouldn't be there. And today I want to bring to you the queen of community. And April, she is I'm gonna butcher your last name, is
Sure.
Uchitel.
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, I did it. Okay, April Uchitel, she's the CEO of the board. She's former CEO of Violet Grey. You've been around. You are in the fashion industry. You are a board of multiple incredible communities. Let's call it communities. But
Mhm.
mostly today, you are the CEO of the board. So what's the board? How the board started?
So the board, funny enough, like the seeds, I think were planted for me back in 2013, to be honest. I was in Manhattan. I was a chief brand officer of a tech company called Shop Spring. We were building a marketplace on mobile. This is super early app ecosystem days, way before there were buy buttons on Instagram. And we really set out to disrupt kind of um, that middleman play that most companies were stuck with a wholesale model. Or moving into direct to consumer, starting slow, and we were there to really bridge that gap in the sense that we were creating one destination for all brands to be shopped on, to control the content, to control the pricing, and actually to acquire the customer. So it was pretty disruptive. And as I onboarded 1,600 brands in 3 years, I ran around Manhattan like a crazy person. And I would go from, really emerging brands at the time. Mansour Graviel was working out of a closet. Harry, Warby Parker, Nasty Gal had just launched, Casper just launched, all the way up to Gucci. And so I would sit in these brand meetings, and because I had been a senior executive in fashion for many years, they just started to share all their other pain points. And so I organically started to connect them with other founders and other companies who had just been through that, whether it was replatforming or a new sales agent or going international. And I just realized how siloed all these companies were building, and it was definitely much more gated back then. This idea that it was, your contact, your buyer, whether it was a service, a 3PL, whatever that may be. And so part of my, role at the board was building out kind of the UX and the experience for the brands, bringing the brands on, and then, the chicken and egg of getting more brands, more customers, more brands, more customers. I started to kind of create a community within the brand partners that we had. And I would bring in Jeff Rader from Harry's to do a fireside chat with brands like Rebecca Minkoff and Maria Cornejo that were really just starting to explore direct to consumer. And so this piece just started to kind of make me more aware from this 360 perspective that there was just nobody was helping each other, and no one was sharing information that could really save hundreds of thousands of dollars and years, of pain had they just spoken to someone down the street. And so I had this idea to really build kind of an Angie's List meets Tinder, where here's my problem, who can I go and talk to? And then how do you make that transactional in the sense that there's a real value share? And when I got to LA and I was the CEO of Violet Grey, it was another 130 brands. And I was constantly getting asked for introductions to formulators, sales agents, looking for a president. And I kind of over time became that resource to go to for information, advisor, network, et cetera. And when I stepped down during the pandemic and just have seen this huge shift with COVID moving everybody into a virtual space, watching all of the senior talent also kind of exit companies and start to move into this fractional space. And so all of a sudden, what initially was brands in these siloed environments became these independent consultants all working from home. And the idea of really kind of creating this one destination in the way that we built Spring for those, talented, and I say vetted because, community is very much around, like-minded humans.
Yeah.
Being able to create a destination for companies looking for talent, and then to really share our knowledge and our resources and our network so that we empower each other in the way that it's very easy to become, siloed and kind of a little lonely when you've now left a team that you were running and, going into your own space. So it's a
Well,
long answer.
It was a long answer, but it was valid. And also, what you created is really a community because it's not about only this matching, it's what you just said about that. I mean, I love to be part of a community that I have a question and I can put it in our chat. And
Yeah.
I'm going to have 10 people answering. And if they don't have the answer, oh, I may be able to introduce you with these people. It's about being kind, being about generous, of
And
helping
I think, I
others.
love to say where generosity and ambition are not mutually exclusive because at the end of the day, everyone is, building companies and we're looking to monetize our knowledge and our skills and bring that impact to more companies when you've left, one. And ultimately, things are changing so fast. There's just to stay relevant and to stay, upskilled and ahead of the curve, you really do need to have your knowledge constantly, advancing. And sometimes it's hard to do that when you're inside a company, really heads down on moving it forward. There's a little bit more visibility coming in as an objective observer, but you're gathering all this information from your peers. And what I really love about this community is that it is very much built on multiple industries and disciplines. I set out not to just do marketing, not to just do beauty, because quite frankly, where I think the tapestry is really rich is when you have, the AI expert, the sustainability expert, the Gen Z expert, the TikTok expert, all kind of sharing their knowledge collectively so that even if it's just like, oh, that's really interesting, kind of a cheat sheet of what's happening, to let's go deeper and really sit with our AI experts and have them really walk us through, where we should be, what we should be reading, what we should be subscribed to, how we should be guiding our clients along all these different ever-changing paths. And so what I love about the community is it's that real generous exchange. And there's just a lot of transparency and I think vulnerability in this space where before, when you're inside a company, it's very much about kind of wearing the armor and
I
kind of for that seat at the table. Now you can be a lot more open and vulnerable and share across the community because we're all in this new way of working.
Yeah, I have to say that someone was asking me this week about being generous or giving advice because I took a call that, and I just say, you don't need to hire me for this. You do it this way and this way. And they were shocked. And
Mhm.
I say, you know what? I only found generosity in people that they really know what they're doing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And I think, the idea, like I said, go back to the scarcity model where it was so gated and closed in fashion, especially, and this idea that, it's your buyer contact, somehow you have a relationship that no one else has. And it's so false because the, the more you open and share, the more you get back. And it's something that I've really practiced deeply in my career of if I can help someone, I will,
Yeah.
and in that sense of making those connections that are so valuable and it comes back later. I have
Yeah,
people
I,
on the
I
board,
I never understood those people who say, I don't recommend because you never know.
and there,
You know,
there's plenty for everybody. I think it's that sense too. And I remember, honestly, when I was at Spring and I was looking at my Angie's List meets Tinder idea, I met this woman who was also at Spring, but she and her husband were part of a brewers organization. So their hobby was making beer on the side. And so she was explaining to me, there's this website where you literally like all the brewers can log in and they can say, what temperature do you guys use? How long does it ferment for? And again, everybody jumps in and answers. And that was 2014. And I remember thinking, that is so genius just to have a space where people can just ask for help and get answers. It seemed, ridiculous. And it's actually, what we do at the board collectively, but there's so many areas. I know so many people that are
but
part
you
of the
have to be a very specific personality to be
yeah.
in the board, and you're a very good uh, selector. I don't know how to say this,
Curator.
or you attract the right people. And I know that not always was the right people, and sometimes you had to make difficult
Yeah.
decisions of
Yeah.
who you let in or not. But it's all about that. It's attracting the right team. It's attracting the right client, and
Yeah.
understanding that we are not competing. Even, I mean, there are other people in the world that have agencies. They're agency owners, and you know
Yeah.
what? We share we have private chats all the time. Hey, this has ever happened to you, or what do you use for this? And
Yeah.
because they're in clients for everyone. What might not be a good client for me might be a
Yeah.
good client for him, and I'm happy to refer.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember when I was and been in president and CEO roles, And generally, when something's happening, you call all the other president and CEO friends at different companies to see if that is exactly, for me, it'd be a request from a department store to participate in an ad vehicle, and they were telling you it costs this much, and you're like, is everybody paying that much? And then you call everybody, and it's that shared knowledge that makes you able to make a smarter business decision. You can't really operate in a bubble. And I think that generosity of spirit where multiple brains can kind of come together and learn from each other. And it could just be someone says one thing and it just opens up a whole other way of thinking. And I've seen it happen in person when we gather, where someone's speaking and a lot of heads are nodding, and then someone's like, oh my God, that is genius. And it could be so subtle and so, just a twist on something they were thinking. And to me, those little baby steps of evolution, when you look back and, I went from fashion to tech to beauty to now community, and our careers evolve, and I don't look at them as pivots, because each thing needed to happen to get to the other thing. And so we're really talking, with most people in their late 40s and above at the board, and 15 years or plus senior roles. And this space has a very strong kind of corporate foundation, has now moved into a very entrepreneurial place when you're working for yourself or you're running your own company. And it's just a different headset. And some people can make that leap easier than others. And really having the support of someone who's been consulting for 12 years with someone who just started last week. And how do we, really kind of help move things forward, especially as we're sharing what's happening in industry, whether it's, paid marketing or SEO or things we can use each other to workshop. So we're giving the best advice to our clients. And it's not something, that we did 2 years ago at a company, because that's already, you can't deploy those tactics anymore. And so it has to really be this real-time approach. And when I talk to brands and founders and we, start to understand where they're stuck, it's really important that they feel safe in who they're working with. And I think having a community mindset really helps people kind of visualize us as an entity, very different than, say, a McKinsey or a huge agency where you kind of get sold in by this guy and this guy works on the project. Our goal is to really have that human connection, and it stems from being built and based on a community model.
Yeah. So I'm so glad that you brought up working with brands, because it's something we were discussing, and it just fascinated to me too. When we approach brands, everyone thinks that they know the problem they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really important to trigger that problem. It's like in medicine. And we were talking about this too. If you have a problem, you have to have a diagnosis.
Yes, you can't just take the aspirin.
Exactly. So it's really, the aspirin is going to be a placebo. It's going to be only for a little while, but you need solutions. And this is a lot of things that I'm seeing in the market right now, that companies that they have solutions, they try to patch the places instead of finding the expertise or the expert. And sometimes it's just one call or a few calls and find that direction. And I feel like a lot of companies are afraid to ask for that help, or not knowing where to go, or going into the wrong hands.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a fear of being vulnerable in the sense that you don't want to say what you don't know, but it's almost more so they're moving so fast. And so where they're reacting is where they feel the most pain. And yet where it's systemic is probably way further back in, that funnel inside. So for example, we'll have people reach out looking for help with social media strategy. And then we send somebody, they get in there and basically they're like, social is not the problem, brand's the problem. The story is not strong, the content's not strong. It's really confusing across all the channels. And so while they're feeling it on social, it's just the reality is it's not firing across the rest of the channels and it's not consistent. And they need to kind of go back and kind of do that work. And so what we really try to guide brands into is almost like brand therapy, where it's what happens when I talk to a founder. It's what all of us happen when we first take that initial phone call, trying to really understand where they're stuck and then deciding if they really are, in that
but
place.
Also, first of all, a lot of things that we have when we have a problems are the symptoms of the problem, not necessarily is the problem itself.
The cause, yeah.
The cause. So, and many times when you are so into the problem, or into your company, I say a lot of founders, or a lot of CEOs of the companies are so in love with their product that they cannot see many times the reality. It's like you're so in love with your husband or boyfriend when you start that you cannot see his flaws. And then they show up at some point. Believe me, they will show up.
They will show up. I think, yes, absolutely. And also, the crazy thing is, some people just don't really understand the roles that go with a certain title. So I'll have a lot of people reaching out saying, I need a CEO, I need a CMO. And then when we start to really look at what they need to have done, I realize like none of that is the role of a CMO. So, for example, we just had a client reach out looking for a CMO. And once we spoke, she needed crisis PR, she needed help with her Amazon shop, and she wanted a whole website audit. And I said, none of those things are a CMO. So it's also this misunderstanding of who to bring in for what, because the way titles are at every company is so different. It's really like, what are the problems, and forget the title, but what are the things we need to solve? And then for us, when we try and do the talent matching, sometimes it's not all one person. It's just, yeah, they think that's one kind of silver bullet that can come in and fix all these things. In the reality, it's just generally not the case. And so we need to do a lot of educating as well, and really figure out the right sequencing and the right scope, because our goal, my goal was always, I want to be that trusted first phone call. So when I sat in my CEO seat and all of a sudden we needed to do something that I didn't have the talent on the team to do, and I had the choices of either getting someone to kind of punch above their weight or go and hire for something that I wasn't quite sure is that the direction we're going in, or bring in someone externally. And then when I decide to go that path, where do I find that person? I generally call people I trust and say, can you recommend a good X? And so for me, the idea for the board was to be that first phone call, that someone could be like, shit, we don't have this talent, or we need to figure this out, we need help, and to call the board and to know that, to me, I take it very personally. It's not book a CMO, log in and they have the skills. It's beyond that. It's not only is this the right person with the skills, but also a culture fit. Are there commonalities that you get just from talking to people about what they're passionate about and how their spirit is? It's kind of my superpower, and being able to be like, oh my God, they're going to love each
You're a
other.
matchmaker.
Exactly. And so my favorite thing is when you're making that match on all levels, and you see it back in the testimonials from companies like, we work with Farfetch, we work with Moda, Operandi, and their feedback was, it was such a pleasure. They were so generous. We learned so much. They helped us in all these ways. And to me, having been in the CEO seat, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for someone to come in and really be a thought partner, really help me, and not just tell me what to do and then make sure my team did it. And really also help me understand what I don't know, right? And I think that's the beauty of someone who's been in that.
I think that that's what you get when you get a seasoned professional, that they are not afraid of speak out, and also they are not necessarily part of the culture of your environment.
And that's the best part, because once you're on the other side of the P&L, like now you're in the politics, you're in the striving for ownership, etc. We take that ego away completely. And it's really just like, how can we come in and help? And I really equated us to kind of a SWAT team idea of, can we get exactly who you need to come in and help really move the needle in a way that feels supported and also educated, right? There's a lot of junior people sometimes in companies that are, kind of above their weight in certain ways, looking for leadership or guidance that they're unable to get because the staffs are smaller, and people are just kind of expected to figure it out. And so for us, we play this almost Switzerland role, where we have this objective view of the company, but again, no ego or personal agenda in moving any other way than listening to the team and the founders and where they're trying to get to. And that's been really, really powerful to have that impact. We just did what we call a blue sky brainstorm with a men's skincare brand, and we were 7 of us for a month, just kind of ideating, workshopping, and then making recommendations so that we could lay out a real landscape across the areas that he was focused on and didn't have the team in-house to do, to then, quite frankly, build that trust, align on, where he's going, where he's been, where he's trying to get to. And then from our recommendations, he was able to start to sequence, first step, second step, third step. But now it's all built on, time spent really getting to know the business and to know him. And I know a lot of companies can't afford, to take that time, but it's just so important before you just start to, build scopes and throw talent or money at aspects of the business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so important. I recently was talking to a brand who somehow they decided that do things overseas because they look more flashy in Europe.
From a production perspective?
No, from the marketing perspective.
Okay, got it.
And so it was very interesting to me because where are you going to sell? who is your target audience, and they're in the US right now. So
Yeah.
you're telling me that you're developing the whole market strategy in another country to target get to the US market?
That seems a little backwards.
Yeah. But
But, you
I
know,
mean,
again, budgets are a factor, right? And so I think, you know, the beauty also of bringing in someone who's project based, or we call it fractional, is really you're getting someone really senior and they're not fully loaded on your P&L. You don't have to invest, you know, X% of your entire staff, you know, the operation budgets in a person, but ultimately have real clarity on this kind of short sprints that you really need help with. And, you know, for me, that 3 to 6 month, where are we at, where we're going to get to is so much easier to track as someone who's run the P&L, and what can I afford in my budget to put towards what, and where am I going to
I
get
think
impact?
that's one of the problems. A lot of the companies that they come to you or to me in this case, they're not aware of the reality of the budgets.
Yeah, that is true. You have to be at that decision-making level, but then also you have to put context around it. So we've had situations where it could be a $35,000 project, but you're getting a CFO, a COO for 6 weeks, doing a deep dive into the business, building out the business model, the operating plan, looking at the merch plan, looking at the marketing plan, interviewing stakeholders, really doing this incredible assessment. And in general, it's the price of 1 month of a CEO. You know, you're getting two key executives doing really incredible work, laying the groundwork, where sometimes, you know, things have shifted as you've scaled, and all of a sudden, like, you know, reporting structures don't work anymore. The
Yeah.
the margins, the marketing budgets are not aligning across channels. And I really believe sometimes you just have to take a breath, and it's really hard to stop and look. And so having people come in and who can do that in tandem with you while you're still doing all your other stuff, I think it's just a really powerful way to support the leadership team and to have them really look at their business objectively with some outside eyes to then say, oh my God, we totally missed that. You're right. That should be our priority, not
Yeah.
that.
How
And
many
that is valuable.
brands I seen that they've done they have marketing plans. They had all these ideas, but they didn't know, they didn't have the cost. For example, they got some execution, but they didn't have money for ads in their budget, ad money, which is a huge mistake.
Yeah.
And they didn't have platforms cost.
Yeah. Yeah, and so then it falls flat, and you know, wasted money that you could have used elsewhere. And
Yeah.
it's really kind of shocking to me how many companies at many sizes don't really have a clear operating plan, you know, whether it's around new business lines, you know, and how they're funding them. And then they start to put too many things on a very small team, you know, that's just impossible to scale at the way that they think. Or quite frankly, what's not working anymore, they can't quite figure out where to spend that money instead. And sometimes you need someone to come in who is really watching every channel now across multiple clients, who has, you know, clear visibility. It's not just that happened for me at my last company 6 months ago. It's like, this is happening across the board. This is the thing, right? Performance marketing is not, you know, bringing in the returns it used to. So what are companies doing, and how are they shifting in terms of brand marketing and partnerships and, you know, collaborations and IRL and whatever that may be? What I love about our community is that we share successes and we share wins. People have visibility into what is working, that it really impacts all the clients that they can work with as well. And
But
so,
also we share what is not working. And we
yes,
share,
which is
hey, anyone have
hugely important.
experience with this company? And
Yeah,
or it's when, because there's so many platforms out
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Which
And
is,
yes, I agree. I mean, one thing that we have too that I think is really unique to us is we have a program called the Black Book of the Board, where we help tech companies get in front of brands and retailers with this very clear mission to really reach decision makers with products and opportunities that we think are super interesting. If we just, when we were sitting in those seats, this would have been something we would have loved to know existed, because the amount of, you know, pitch decks they're getting, the amount of people reaching out to them, especially with now everything that's an AI based, you know, technology play, it's really overwhelming. And having sat in that CEO seat and being pitched 24/7 by agencies and by new technologies and payment partners and everything else, it's like a full-time job just to vet who's coming at you. And so for me, being able to, again, be this bridge to help our networks, you know, our brands and retailers understand where some new emerging technologies out there that is really powerful and worth taking a look at. And because we have this very informal relationship, they can quickly say, great, nope, we're building it ourselves, not interested, I just lost my CMO. And we can get a lot of intelligence back for these tech companies And it's that bridge that I feel like the board is building across, members to members, members to clients, technology to clients. And, really I see us as this ecosystem. Like I said, I want to be that first phone call when someone's like, I need help. And that could be a member. And so when I look at the inbound, so we have about 220 members now. We have about 400 applications. And quite frankly, the network is really what's driving, because if you're connected to a member already, you kind of know what to expect, but also there's this sense of like, these are my people. And so that's kind of when you're, going back to how do I curate this? It really, a lot came from people in my network in the beginning that I just organically was watching change their career paths, and then they would introduce more people, and it really had this groundswell.
Or like me, that we kept running into each other
Yeah,
in the same
exactly.
places.
True. At the show. And, and then people are like, you should talk to April, you should talk to April. And, and for me, I think I'm a good judge of character. I also, it's a recommendation engine at the end of the day. So I need to be able to make sure that if I'm saying, you need to work with Laura, she's amazing, that I really truly believe and know that.
Yeah.
And that generally comes from other people's recommendations and, the careers that everyone has had. You can look back at all the companies they've worked at, and then we can see people in common, and all those things start to say like, okay, there's a real shared understanding of spending years in these types of companies, from Google, Meta, Apple, Condé Nast, Disney, Goop, Walmart. Those are a lot of where our members have come from, as well as, a lot of them have been from, C-suite roles, CPG companies, really big, huge roles, and now completely shifting. And it's really the human side of community that I think we really do solve for well, is that helping each other with no expectation of something in return, right? That's just that's what you sign up for when you join a community in general.
I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
I've been seeing this a lot. Everyone wants to be a consultant.
Yeah.
And a consultant is something that consult on something specific. I've been seeing these consultants that want to be 360. I personally will never hire a consultant just for a whole business. You want experts, and that's what the board
specialized skills.
has.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of people that they dream of this consultancy or fractional life, and they think it's easy.
No.
In your vision, in your experience, who is the right person, or what is the right time of your life to become fractional?
It's I think, to me, when you've had like a variety of experiences and you start to realize at a certain point you become a generalist, right? You've touched a lot of stuff, you've done a lot of stuff, you've run a lot of teams, and there's a bit of a calling that's like, oh, but my favorite part was the brand building, or my favorite part was the narrative. And I think the consultants that do really well are the ones that have kind of really honed in on that passion part, because they can also pick up these things once they're in there. But what is the key thing that they're trying to help companies with? We do a lot of kind of workshopping in this space, because when you move into consulting, you kind of tell everybody you do all these things, but it's really impossible on the other side to be like, okay, but what should I hire you for? And it's like, we had this conversation about, painkiller versus vitamin, in terms of, you're there to solve a problem. The more you can be clear about the problem you're solving, the better they can understand what they want you for. And if you stay in this very general space, it's really challenging to kind of narrow that down. And so I think the people that do it really well are that have real clear perspective on, the value that they bring. And so whether it's you're doing regulation, in kind of product development, or even if you're a fractional CMO, which in general is, can mean a lot of things, there's something that is your sweet spot. And so we have a member whose sweet spot is go to market. Like, she's 0, to 15, maybe to 20, but at 20 million, she's not your girl. And she's so clear, and she knows like that's where she wins. We have other people that are like, hate the building part. They want to blow it up. They like to take it from here to here. And so really understanding where, your own superpowers are within that framework, and then being able to kind of package yourself, because the more clear you can be, it's like anything, if you have to read too much and like, I'm still not quite sure what they do, we've already lost them.
Getting clients is not easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's also the network. And, so the also reason I built the board is to create that point of sale, technically, where we can increase visibility for ourselves and for all members, so that when someone is like, shoot, I need help, we surface as a destination. And it's very much this word of mouth network effect. What I've loved is it's really been trusted relationships, referring trusted relationships as like, you need to work with these guys. And definitely, we're all playing the long game, right? I think people that move into consulting and then eventually like, this is too hard. I just got to go get a full-time job. Maybe weren't built for that space, and I think it's really enticing to think, oh, I have better quality of life, I have more flexibility, but you have to be also prepared for the hustle. And some people aren't built in that same way. I've been in
Yeah,
sales my career, so I know
it is
how to
a
do it.
hustle. It is a hustle.
But it's leaning in and being just really strategic of who and how to put yourself out there. And right now budgets are tight. Things are closing, taking longer to close.
But
People
also
see what
something you
happens
need
with the
to
election.
know is your value. And this is something that I'm learning lately, and I'm really trying to be better at it. Not give my work for free, because
Yeah.
my team, my time, everything costs money. And
Yes.
at the end of the day, you're not able to scale because you're being held back for using your time with something else.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's hard when someone needs help but they can't afford the help, they're going to ask for favors. And you, as a good person, want to help people as much as you
Yeah.
can. But at the end of the day, this is our livelihood. My husband and I, he's a photographer and he has a studio and shoots, and he's always getting people trying to barter on the rate. And he's like, you don't go into the car dealership and say, I really want that car, but can you give it to me for 40% off? There's this sense of negotiation now that is kind of wacky. And it's really honestly disrespectful of the person, unless it's an outrageous margin and there's room. There's certain people and bigger agencies that have more room to negotiate, but the idea of going direct to somebody that is really their direct income. And so asking someone to take less for their talent is not ideal. And having the conviction to say, what, I'm worth more than that. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't work for me. And I totally can help you and I'd love to help you, but it has to be, it has to work for both of us. And so I'm also getting better at recognizing that. And which is why we started office hours, where we could send people that couldn't afford a $10,000 a month scope to talk to someone and get really tactical advice on an hourly basis. And I think that's what I think is a good solve, because there's still a transactional element, which means you're going to show up and I'm going to show up and we're going to do this with this intention, as opposed to I'm going to take you to coffee and pick your brain and you're going to kind of not really care because you're not getting paid. And, it doesn't really work in the long run. And I think it's just a matter of more times people try and do that and they realize they're not getting the great advice, and that you get what you pay for at the end of the day.
Exactly. And picking someone's mind for a minute is not going to give you really the tools that you need to execute.
No. And there's definitely, and I've helped and had many, many thousands of phone calls over the years, in those situations when someone's making a career move and they just want to know, what do I think about this industry? And but there's a certain point where there's only so many hours in the day, and where can that time go? But I think, networking is huge and great. And especially as you're moving up in your career, finding mentors and finding people. And that's a different thing in the way I think about this. Is actual people looking for advice for their business and not wanting to pay for it, which is very different than, I'm graduating college and I want to get into this industry and my friend is in that industry and will you talk to her? That's very different in my opinion. And we do mentoring at the board as well. And we can really, put parameters around that, and then we can put a structure, and then it's really easy to program. And we're happy to build in those, those elements. And we're doing that right now with the CFDA. And ultimately it's a big give overall, but it's a low lift individually when you can bring a bunch of people together to all give, an hour or two of their time. And so for me, it's again finding the right structure.
And believe me, when those minds are together, even when we get together for a meeting or whatever, you can see the energy, it's boiling, and you can see these waves and magic happens.
Well, and it go, so we have our New York meeting coming up, and one of the topics we have is future casting, which can mean a bunch of stuff. But one of the members who's kind of leading it is really, really sparkly and dynamic and has all these great ideas of what the future looks like in this space for us. And so to be able to sit in a room with 50 people and really kind of have that conversation and almost workshop it live, I think that's the beauty of our community. We're less about the experts talking at everybody else. It's really the sense of sharing from all sides. And so, there's also boundaries, and that's a big conversation that we have a lot. And so, to me, it's really, like I said, we're playing the long game. If this is really where you want to land and how you want to help companies. And my goal is to really help companies. That's truly at the bottom line. And that's what the members are here to do as well, and help each other, in the process.
So I love that that's the intention. I believe that intentions are important.
Yeah.
When it starts from a good place, it's never good that I want to make money off you.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
And
And I
that
think
makes
reciprocity and there's, a very transactional environment can still be very positive and very empowering. We just got to know what the rules of the game are. And I think for me, that took me a minute in building this community as to what value to place on membership and what value and how many people to have and how much programming and really community is not easy. It's really not. And you can't please
in a community, there are also many opinions.
Many opinions, and you can't be everything to everybody. And so you look for those through lines. And for me, it's really that integrity and that way of wanting to do it differently, that generosity, which we talked about. Like there are certain core principles, ambition being one of them, but also impact, that to me is when I see real alignment from new members that come into the community. And, it's what can I bring? What can I take? What can we do together? And it's with that philosophy that I think, honestly, if you look at the world today and how divided and divisive it is, we're all looking for those, kind of like-minded thinkers and people, whether it is in our neighborhood or our communities through work and through school and kids and other parents, and you find your people. And so leaning into that and making those connections with those founders and companies and investors, and there's a lot that we have deep relationships with, and we can really be that trusted resource. And at the end of the day, it's about the people, completely. And so
it is. It really is.
I'm thrilled that you're part of it.
It is. It's all about finding your people. April, thank you so much for being here. This was really, really nice to have actually a little time and talk to you, which I never do.
Same.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And I will see you out there next week with more Coffee Number 5.
Find everything you need at larashmoisman.com or in the episode notes right below. Don't forget to subscribe.
It was so good to have you here today. See you next time. Catch you on the flip side. Ciao, ciao.